Welcome everyone to the second video of this entire online course series. This is theme 1, part 2, and this is exam introduction. Okay, so let me provide you with an overview of the exam for the AP Biology exam. So there are two parts in the exam. First part is multiple choice questions, or MCQs in short. You'll be given 60 questions to solve within 90 minutes, and it is equivalent to 50% of your entire AP score. After a short break for about 10 minutes, more or less, you'll be taking the free response questions or the FRQ section, where you will be solving 6 questions within 90 minutes. So that's around 50% of your score. This means that both sections are equally important because each section is about half of your entire exam score. This is quite unique because you might know some exams like AP English language, where FRQ, the weighting for FRQ is significant as compared to that of MCQ, but that's not the case for AP Biology. Both sections are equally important. And also you'll be provided with the formula sheet, where you'll be given select equations and formulas that you might need. For most cases, you really don't need it. But although you are given the formula, you do not need to memorize it, but it does mean that you have to understand when and how to use these equations and how to interpret whatever value that comes out. And I'll teach you through it. And for the scoring, I think a lot of you want to know about how the exam is scored, or how AP exam is scored in general. AP exam is not curved, it is scaled. This means that when you curve an exam, it means that the test score, the score that you receive, depends on other people's performance. However, when we scale an exam, it means that there is a predetermined scale. So whatever that you perform based on the scale, that's your score. Other people's performance really does not matter, okay? So that's the case for AP exam, it's scaled, okay? For one MCQ question, you get a point. Okay, so let's say I scored perfect on the MCQ section, which is perfect. You get a total of 60 points. Okay, and for FRQ, you're given 6 big questions, but within that, there are like sub questions, which I call small FRQ questions. There are a total of 36 small FRQ questions, and mathematically speaking, each of them is worth 1.7647 points. Okay, so that leads to a conclusion that 2 MCQ questions are equivalent to 1 FRQ question in terms of scoring. Okay, so missing a single small FRQ question is equivalent to missing 2 MCQ questions. Okay, so after adding up the section points for both MCQ and FRQ sections, you get something called the raw score. And that raw score has a scale, which then is being converted to the AP score, which spans from 5 to 1, right? So as you can see in this chart, you have a raw score based on your total MCQ and FRQ section scores, and that translates into AP score. Okay, and you can recognize that the range of 5 is quite high, right? You don't need a perfect score. You don't need to get all the questions right in order to score a 5. Generally, I would say missing 10 MCQ questions and missing 10 small FRQ questions, that's the minimum benchmark for a 5, okay? So while you're practicing the exam, you have to make sure that each time, if you're aiming for a 5, that each time you at least score around this much in order to get a safe 5, okay? And as you can see, there are raw score conversions for 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so let me talk about the MCQ. Again, you're given 60 questions to solve within 90 minutes. And uniquely, each question has a stimulus. If I say stimulus, it means description, graph, lab data, or diagram, okay? Some stimuli have multiple questions accompanied, meaning that you're given like a single, let's say, diagram, and there might be 4 to 5 questions or 2 to 3 questions that accompany that stimuli. Okay, let's see. This is from the actual AP exam. Okay, so you can see this is the stimulus. This is a diagram of two short fragments of DNA, and based on that, you're supposed to answer the question. Okay, so one trick here is by reading the stimulus, you should have like a general idea of what this question is trying to ask you. Okay, so let's say, for example, if I were to answer this question by reading or analyzing two short fragments of DNA, I should have like a general understanding of what question, what this question is trying to get at. Okay, what concept is this question trying to assess you? What traps can this question possibly have? So you should be analyzing the stimulus thoroughly and extensively in order to ace the MCQ section of the exam. So I highly recommend thinking MCQ as the FRQ. So after reading the stimulus and understanding what the question is trying to ask, and after reading the question, how would you answer that question, that MCQ question, as an FRQ? Okay, then you should move on to find the question answer choice that best represents your prediction. Okay, so again, think MCQ as the FRQ. You're just confirming your guess or your educated guess of what the answer might be. Okay, and one difficult part of the AP biology exam is that all answer choices usually make sense. Okay, they're not wrong. Okay, they somehow make sense, but you should choose the best one. Very similar to SAT, where they all technically make sense, but there's always that best answer, right? That's why you should always think MCQ as the FRQ. By thoroughly understanding the question's point, by analyzing the stimulus and the question itself, you should have a strong sense of what answer choice best suits the question, okay? And one trick here, for all AP exams and including the SATs, or even all college board exams, if an answer choice contains 10% of incorrect information and 90% of correct information, it means that it's 100% incorrect, okay? Even a single word that is incorrect can make the entire answer choice incorrect, okay? And sometimes 50% correct and 50% ambiguous might be the answer, okay? But as soon as you find something incorrect, that's just incorrect, okay? As you're given 60 questions to solve within 90 minutes, the time pacing itself is very tight. That's why I highly recommend you to understand the prompt thoroughly before answering, okay? This is to minimize rereading and uselessly wasting time to reread or peruse the prompt, okay? So at the moment you analyze the stimulus, you should have a strong understanding of where this question is trying to get at, okay? By analyzing the stimulus, you should have a keen understanding of what concepts you're observing in the question. For example, back to that DNA question. After analyzing the stimulus, you're able to have a generic guess that this will be something pertinent to DNA or genetic material, right? So you should have like a basic understanding of what concepts you're observing in this particular question. Always consider spending a minute per question. If you cannot find the answer, skip for now, okay? And always leave around 5 to 10 minutes for final check and marking, because you'll have to fill in that bubble sheet for all AP Bio MCQ exams. So take that into consideration. For the MCQ, each question has 4 answer choices, okay? And for the 4 answer choices, it will contain 2 wrong choices that are irrelevant, okay? It might be factual though. It might make sense. They might be based on biological facts, but they're just irrelevant, okay? Always, there's a distractor. It sounds correct, but doesn't really answer the exact prompt, okay? And there's that correct choice that answers the prompt and is relevant to the question. That's why I highly recommend thinking MCQ as the FRQ. By analyzing the stimulus and the question, you have a general understanding of how you might answer this question as an FRQ, and you just search and find the best answer choice that most suits your first guess, okay? Again, I'll cover more strategies through the MCQ part of this video course series, but always that distractor might doom you. So be careful. College Board intentionally puts in distractor to properly discern the students that actually understands the concept and those that do not. Okay, so let's do an example. This is actually US history, but I just wanted to show you how the exam might be structured for the MCQ section. So let's go through this. This excerpt is adapted from United States Declaration of Independence, originally published in 1776 and drafted by Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and others. Okay, so I read through the first sentence of the stimulus, and I'm thinking, okay, I know where this question is going. I know that they will be talking about the Declaration of Independence era, American Revolution, all the fights between loyalists and patriots, and around the era of American Revolution and Revolutionary War. Okay, so let's read the second sentence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. Okay, after reading that, I'm thinking that, okay, this statement is pretty much the most famous one, the most famous statement in the entire declaration, where it talks about how the American colonists were oppressed by intolerable taxation acts, right? And now they're actually fighting for freedom, and that they want a fundamental shift. They do not want an, how should I say, a despot or like a king ruling the subjects. They want to overthrow that system and move forward into a democratic system of government. Okay, so I have that understanding. Okay, so this is what you should be doing for the MCQ section. As you read through the stimulus, first you have an understanding of what concept this question is trying to test you, and number two, you analyze the stimulus of what this stimulus is trying to tell you. Okay, and now I'll read the question. The quote is above is likely a response to blah blah blah. Okay, so based on my explanation and analysis of whatever that I just said, right, all about those fundamental shift in politics and all that, I think I can find an answer. Okay, so A, increasing demand for workers' right and security during Industrial Revolution. Okay, that's irrelevant, right? We're talking about American Revolution, not Industrial Revolution, okay? But one thing is that they are facts, right? This is true, right? There was an increasing demand for rights and security during Industrial Revolution, but they're just wrong in terms of relevance, okay? This is what I mentioned previously about how all answer choices factually make sense, but they're just irrelevant to the given context. Okay. Elevated understanding of universal equality during Enlightenment era. Okay, this is the correct answer. Because I was talking about fundamental shift, right? This statement in particular talks about fundamental shift in understanding of the relationship between humans, right? Of how they no longer want king ruling subjects, and they do think that such a system is unjustified, so they're seeking for change. Okay, C, intolerable taxation to American colonists by King George III of Great Britain. Okay, this is distractor, okay? This is also fact, and I explained this might be relevant, but does this sentence in particular, where they talk about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, does this statement or phrase have anything to do with intolerable taxation? No, right? So this is how College Board might try to trick you by getting distractor. And again, this is to discern who actually understands the concept and those who do not. Okay, and the abolitionist, just know, right? We're not talking about slavery. Okay, so the answer choice is B. This is how you should be approaching all MCQ questions. First, by reading the stimulus, discern where this question is getting at, and analyze the stimulus. And think about how you would answer this question as a FRQ. okay? Then you go through one by one and you choose the answer that best represents your initial thought. And always there's that distractor that actually sounds right, but they're not actually relevant to the entire context. They might be slightly off in terms of relevance. And there are always two answer choices that generically does not make sense. Although they might be factual, they're just super duper irrelevant to the context. Now moving on to the FRQ section. For the FRQ section, you have 6 questions in total, and there are 36 small FRQ questions, right? I told you for each question, there might be various subproblems. For those 6 questions, there are 2 long questions and 4 short questions, which you'll be given 90 minutes to solve. I generally recommend starting with the short questions because long questions are long and they're more difficult, arguably, and there are more stimulus. The stimulus is generally 2 to 3 pages long, which is crazy, right? So you might want to begin with short questions using around 10 minutes per question just to warm up, okay? And for long questions, I highly recommend using 15 to 20 minutes per question, okay? So short questions, you're warming up, okay? Your brain is fried after that MCQ section. You don't know how well you did. So warm up, get that pace, and understand the exam dynamics and the environment, and then move on to long questions to stay focused and remain that pace that you established. And timing is very, very important. So keep that in mind. For each long question, they have 4 to 5 small questions, okay? But that small question may worth 1 to 3 points, okay? The scoring for each small question might vary, although it averages to around 1.7647 point per question. And because there's a specific impartial category for scoring, you should answer all question prompts for each small question. Always focus on the verbs of the question prompts. It might ask you to explain this, justify this, describe this, propose this, identify this, okay? Focus on the verbs because they impose a category for scoring, okay? They pretty much, the College Board grades the exam based on how much you completed and actually answered the question prompts, which are based on the verbs like explain, justify, and describe, okay? And for the long question, the stimulus is generally an experiment with results, okay? So you should be thoroughly analyzing the stimulus, which is around 2 to 3 pages long. Generally, it starts with experimental setup and the results, and you'll be asked 4 to 5 small questions that have a category for scoring, okay? Again, I mentioned that there are around 4 to 5 small questions for the long FRQ, which are the first 2 questions of the 6 FRQ questions. And it's very important to thoroughly understand the stimulus and recall the concept, as I always mentioned. Generally, the first small question is about explaining the concept related to stimulus. So you might be asked to identify or describe like a simple concept. Small question 2 is generally about identifying the experimental factors like variables. The third small question is describing or analyzing experimental results. Small question 4 is often about predicting the experimental results, improving the experiment, or even proposing a model. So you can see College Board attempts to holistically evaluate your understanding of the stimulus materials for the long questions, especially. And either small question 1 or 2 for one of the 2 long questions will require you to draw a graph. So we'll do some practice with statistics and graphing, so do not worry about this. For the short questions, the last 4 questions out of total 6 FRQ questions, again, you're recommended to spend around 10 minutes per question. The third small question is the third short question is generally about scientific investigation, very similar to the first 2 long questions, but generally shorter in length. So you'll be analyzing an experiment. Question 4 is conceptual analysis. They might be giving you a scenario. Question 5 is analysis of model or visual representation. Question 6 is analysis of data. So as you can see, there are skills that you have to master in order to ace the AP biology exam. And just to provide you with an overview for the FRQ, you have 6 questions in total. The first 2 questions are long questions. The last 4 questions are the short ones. And for each FRQ question, there are those small questions, okay? Again, I'll be covering more strategies in Summa Cum Laude AP Biology FRQ part, which is the final part of the exam. So I'll be going through the question types and how to answer them, how to analyze the stimulus, and all the strategies you need to ace the exam. Yes, so that was all. I think I introduced more than what's necessary for the AP Biology exam. Again, I thank y'all for joining this journey to pioneer AP Biology experience for everyone. And I'll see you in that next video where we'll directly move on to concept videos and let's actually start learning. Okay, so see you in theme 2 and have a great day.